A Lady's Conviction by Clara Winslow. The carriage rattled over the uneven cobblestones of London, jostling Miss Katherine Fairchild against the worn velvet cushions. Outside, the grey sky threatened rain, casting a pallid light through the small window. She clutched her well-worn copy of Sense and Sensibility closer to her chest, seeking comfort in the familiar weight of it. Today would determine the course of her future, for better or worse. "We have arrived, miss," the driver called, bringing the horses to a halt before an imposing townhouse on Berkeley Square. Katherine smoothed the folds of her modest blue dress, a garment that had seen better days but was still the finest she owned. Drawing a steadying breath, she stepped from the carriage, her gaze lifting to the grand facade of Westmoreland House. The residence of the Earl of Thornfield loomed before her, its windows like watchful eyes scrutinizing her arrival. "Remember why you are here," she whispered to herself. She was not applying for the position of governess out of desire, but necessity. With her father's death 3 months prior, the modest inheritance he had left was barely sufficient to cover the outstanding debts, leaving Katherine and her younger sister, Beatrice, with few options. A uniformed footman greeted her at the door, his expression betraying nothing as he led her through the marble-floored entrance hall. The opulence surrounding her was intimidating: crystal chandeliers, gilded mirrors, and artwork that spoke of generations of wealth and privilege. "Miss Fairchild for the governess position," the footman announced, showing her into a warmly lit study. The woman who rose to greet her was not what Katherine had expected. Lady Caroline Thornfield was perhaps 40, with kind eyes that contradicted her formal bearing. "Miss Fairchild, welcome. Please sit." Katherine perched on the edge of a chair, hands folded in her lap to conceal their slight trembling. "Thank you for considering my application, Lady Thornfield. Your references are impeccable. Cambridge-educated father, fluent in French and Italian, accomplished in music and drawing." Lady Thornfield studied her with interest. "Why, with such qualifications, have you not sought marriage instead of employment?" Katherine maintained her composure despite the personal inquiry. "My circumstances have changed, my lady. My father's academic pursuits, while intellectually rewarding, were not financially prudent." Before Lady Thornfield could respond, the study door swung open forcefully. A tall man strode in, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his expression one of preoccupation. "Caroline, I've just returned from—" He stopped abruptly upon noticing Katherine. Katherine rose instinctively, feeling heat rise to her cheeks under his intense scrutiny. "James, this is quite improper," Lady Thornfield admonished, though with obvious affection. "I am conducting an interview." "My apologies," he replied, though his gaze remained fixed on Katherine. "I was not aware you had company." Lady Thornfield sighed. "Miss Fairchild, may I present my brother-in-law, Lord James Thornfield? James, this is Miss Katherine Fairchild, applying for the position of governess to the children." Lord James Thornfield was nothing like the elderly Earl Katherine had imagined as master of this house. The man before her was perhaps 30, with a countenance that combined stern authority with unexpected warmth. His attire, though clearly expensive, showed signs of recent outdoor activity. "Miss Fairchild." He bowed slightly, a formality at odds with the intensity of his observation. "My lord." Katherine curtsied, hoping the quaver in her voice was not evident. "James has recently returned from overseeing the family's northern estates," Lady Thornfield explained. "Since his brother's passing last year, he has assumed the title and responsibilities of the earldom." Understanding dawned on Katherine. The previous earl had died, and this was his successor, the man who would ultimately be her employer. Her stomach tightened with apprehension. "Your references are most impressive, Miss Fairchild," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Though I wonder if you realize what you're undertaking. My niece and nephew can be rather spirited." There was a challenge in his tone that Katherine could not ignore. "I assure you, my lord, I am not easily daunted. Children respond to consistency and genuine interest in their development." A flash of something, amusement perhaps, crossed his features. "Indeed. Well, I shall not interrupt further. Caroline, we will speak later." With another bow, he departed, leaving Katherine with the distinct impression of having been thoroughly assessed. Lady Thornfield smiled apologetically. "You must forgive my brother-in-law. Since becoming guardian to his niece and nephew, he has been particularly selective about their care." "I understand completely," Katherine replied, though her mind was still processing the unexpected encounter. The interview continued, with discussions of salary, duties and expectations. By its conclusion, Katherine had secured the position and was to commence her duties the following week. As she departed Westmoreland House, Katherine could not shake the feeling that her life had just irrevocably changed, and not merely due to her new employment. Katherine's first weeks at Westmoreland House passed in a blur of activity. Her charges, 10-year-old Lady Emma and 8-year-old Lord George, were indeed spirited, but responded well to her firm yet gentle approach. Their days were filled with lessons in the schoolroom, walks in the nearby park when weather permitted, and educational excursions to museums and historical sites. Lord Thornfield remained an enigmatic figure, often absent on estate business or engaged in parliamentary affairs. On the rare occasions when their paths crossed, Katherine found him observant and surprisingly knowledgeable about his ward's education, asking pointed questions about their progress. One rainy afternoon, Katherine was reading aloud to the children in the library when Lord Thornfield entered unexpectedly. "Uncle James," Emma exclaimed, abandoning all decorum to rush to him. George followed suit, bombarding him with tales of their studies. Katherine rose, intending to grant them privacy, but Lord Thornfield gestured for her to remain. "Please, Miss Fairchild, I should like to observe your teaching methods, if you have no objection." She nodded, though his presence was disconcerting. "We were reading about ancient civilizations, my lord." "Excellent. Pray continue." Katherine resumed the lesson, acutely aware of his gaze. The children, eager to impress their uncle, participated with uncommon enthusiasm. When the lesson concluded and the children were dismissed for their afternoon exercise with the footman, Katherine began gathering her materials. "You have a gift with them," Lord Thornfield remarked, approaching the table where she worked. They were unmanageable with their previous tutors. "They are intelligent children who simply require engagement, my lord," Katherine replied, careful to maintain professional distance despite the unexpected compliment. "And they clearly admire you?" He picked up one of the books she had selected. "Herodotus? Rather advanced for children their age." "I adapt the material, my lord. The fundamental concepts of history and moral philosophy are accessible when properly presented." She paused, wondering if she had overstepped, but he seemed genuinely interested. "I confess I had reservations about hiring someone so young for this position. I see now my concerns were unfounded." His gaze met hers directly, causing an inexplicable flutter in her chest. "Thank you, my lord." "James." Katherine blinked in confusion. "When we are discussing the children's education, I would prefer you call me James. My lord creates an unnecessary barrier to frank discourse." The request, or was it a command, took her by surprise. "That would be highly improper, my lord." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Perhaps, but I have never been overly concerned with propriety for its own sake." Before Katherine could formulate a response, Lady Thornfield entered the library. "Ah, there you are, James. The solicitor has arrived regarding the Northumberland property." With a nod to Katherine, he departed, leaving her unsettled by the encounter. As summer yielded to early fall, Katherine found herself increasingly drawn into the household's daily life. Lady Thornfield treated her with unexpected warmth, often inviting her to take tea or accompany the family on outings when her duties permitted. Lord Thornfield, too, seemed to seek her company with growing frequency. He began appearing in the schoolroom to observe lessons, engaged her in discussions about the children's education, and even requested her opinion on books for the family library. Katherine knew she should maintain appropriate distance, yet found herself captivated by his quick mind and the unexpected gentleness he displayed with his wards. Beneath his reserved exterior lay a man of deep feeling and principle, qualities that resonated with her own nature. One crisp morning, Katherine was supervising the children's drawing lesson in the garden when Lord Thornfield joined them. "Uncle, look what Miss Fairchild has taught us." Emma proudly displayed her sketch of the garden fountain. "Most impressive," he praised, examining both children's work before turning to Katherine. "You have many talents, Miss Fairchild." "My father believed in comprehensive education," she replied, uncomfortable with the personal direction of his comment. "Indeed. Would you walk with me? I wish to discuss George's mathematics progress." The children were absorbed in their task, well within sight of the house, so Katherine acquiesced, falling into step beside him along the gravel path. "George's understanding of mathematical principles is advancing nicely," she began, but Lord Thornfield interrupted gently. I confess mathematics was merely a pretext. I wish to speak with you privately. Katherine tensed. My lord? You have been here nearly 3 months, yet I realize I know little of you beyond your professional capabilities. His tone was conversational, but his eyes revealed deeper interest. There is little to know, my lord. My life has been rather ordinary. I doubt that. A woman of your intelligence and character must have an interesting history. He guided her toward a stone bench beneath an ancient oak. Please, indulge my curiosity. Katherine hesitated, then spoke cautiously. I grew up in Cambridge, where my father was a professor of classical literature. Our home was modest but filled with books and ideas. My mother died when I was 14, leaving me to care for my father and younger sister. And now? My father passed away 3 months ago. The small inheritance he left barely covered his debts. She looked away, discomfited by revealing such personal circumstances. My sister Beatrice is now with our aunt in Bath, while I sought employment to support us both. Understanding dawned in his expression. Hence your application here, despite qualifications that might have secured you a more advantageous position, or marriage. The directness of his observation brought heat to her cheeks. My obligations to my sister take precedence over personal considerations. Your loyalty is admirable. He was silent for a moment, contemplating the garden. I understand family duty all too well. When my brother died, I inherited not only his title but responsibility for his children and estates, a life I never anticipated. The unexpected confidence created a moment of connection between them. For the first time, Katherine saw not the Earl, but the man, one who, like herself, had assumed burdens out of duty and affection. The children are fortunate to have you, she said softly. He smiled, a rare, unguarded expression that transformed his features. As they are to have you, Katherine? The use of her given name, spoken with such warmth, sent a tremor through her. It was a boundary crossed, a formality discarded. Their eyes met, and in that suspended moment, Katherine recognized the dangerous territory into which she had wandered. She rose quickly. The children will have completed their drawings. I should return to them. He stood as well. Of course. But our conversation has only begun, I think. Katherine hurried back to her charges, her composure shaken by the encounter and her own response to it. She was here as governess, nothing more. To forget that fact would lead only to disappointment, or worse. October brought a house party to Westmoreland House, filling the normally peaceful residence with London society. Katherine kept to the schoolroom and servants' areas, acutely aware of the social gulf that separated her from the guests. On the third evening of the gathering, Katherine was returning from the kitchen with a tray for the children's supper when she encountered Lord Thornfield in the corridor. Miss Fairchild, he greeted her, seeming pleased by the chance meeting. Are you well? I have scarcely seen you this week. Quite well, my lord. I thought it best to keep the children's routine undisturbed during the festivities. Sensible, as always. He hesitated, then added, though your absence has been noted. By me, at least. The simple admission caused her pulse to quicken traitorously. You have guests to entertain, my lord. I would not wish to intrude. On the contrary, your presence would be most welcome. His voice lowered. In fact, I had hoped you might join us tomorrow evening. Lady Caroline specifically requested your company at dinner. Katherine nearly dropped the tray in surprise. My lord, surely you realize the impropriety? A governess dining with your distinguished guests would cause talk. Let them talk, he replied dismissively. You are more educated and accomplished than half the so-called ladies present. Besides, it is my house. I may invite whom I please to my table. The invitation was tempting, a glimpse into a world from which she was now excluded. Yet Katherine knew better than to indulge such fantasies. I appreciate the kindness, truly, but I must decline. My position here is what you make of it, he interrupted. Katherine, surely you recognize. My lord, she cut in, her heart racing at his use of her name, I am grateful for your consideration, but I am employed as governess to your wards. To blur that distinction would serve neither of us well. Something like frustration crossed his features. You deliberately misunderstand me. No, my lord, she replied quietly. I understand all too well. She continued past him, retreating to the sanctuary of the schoolroom, where social boundaries were clear and her heart was not in peril. The house party concluded, leaving Westmoreland House in blessed quietude once more. Yet the atmosphere had subtly changed. Lord Thornfield spent more time at his London clubs and parliamentary duties, while Katherine threw herself into the children's education with renewed dedication. When they did encounter one another, a new formality characterized their interactions, as if both were determined to forget the momentary connection they had shared. Winter descended upon London, bringing with it a severe cold that confined Emma to her bed. Katherine nursed the child devotedly, reading stories and administering the physician's recommended treatments. Late one evening, as she prepared to retire after a long vigil at Emma's bedside, there was a soft knock at the schoolroom door. Lord Thornfield entered, his expression betraying concern. "How is she?" "The fever has broken," Katherine reported, relief evident in her voice. "The doctor believes she will recover fully with rest." "Thank God." He approached the desk where Katherine had been working. "And you look exhausted." "I am well enough, my lord." He sighed heavily. "Must we return to such formality? After all these months?" Katherine remained standing, maintaining the physical distance between them. "It is appropriate, my lord." "Appropriate," he echoed. "What a tyrannical word." He paced before the fireplace, agitation evident in his movements. "Katherine, I can no longer pretend. These past weeks of distance have been intolerable." "My lord?" "James," he insisted. "At least grant me that." She swallowed hard. "James, whatever you mean to say, I implore you to reconsider." He stopped directly before her, close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of his sandalwood cologne. "Why? Because you are employed in my household. Because society would disapprove? Are such considerations worth denying what exists between us?" "What exists is inappropriate," she whispered, though her resolve wavered at his proximity. "I disagree." His voice softened. "What exists is rare and precious. I have known many women of appropriate birth and fortune. None have captivated me as you have, with your intelligence, your principles, your quiet strength." Katherine closed her eyes briefly, steeling herself against the temptation of his words. "You flatter me unduly." "I speak only truth." He moved closer, his hand rising as if to touch her face before dropping away. "Since you arrived, you have transformed this house, brought life and purpose not only to the children but to me as well." "James, please," her voice faltered, "I cannot be what you seek." "You already are." His gaze held hers with unwavering intensity. "I love you, Katherine. I believe you feel similarly, though your sense of propriety prevents you from acknowledging it." The declaration hung between them, altering everything. Katherine's careful defenses crumbled beneath the weight of her own emotions. "My feelings are irrelevant. I am their governess, you are an earl. The world does not permit such connections." "The world be damned," he replied with quiet vehemence. "I am not proposing an illicit liaison, Katherine. I am offering marriage." She gasped, certain she had misheard. "Marriage? That is impossible." "Why? Because I possess a title you do not covet? Such distinctions mean nothing to me." "They will mean everything to your family, to society." Katherine shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "I will not be the cause of your estrangement from your world. My world is where I choose to make it." He took her hand, his touch sending warmth coursing through her. "With you and Emma and George. The rest is merely trappings." "You speak from the privilege of your position," she protested weakly. "You cannot know what it means to be judged, to be found wanting, because of circumstances beyond your control." "Then teach me." His fingers tightened around hers. "Share your perspective, challenge my understanding. That is precisely why I need you, Katherine, not as a governess, but as my equal, my partner in all things." The sincerity in his eyes weakened her resistance. Could it truly be possible? Or was she indulging in a fantasy that would ultimately bring pain to them all? "The children adore you already. They would be overjoyed." His expression grew serious. "I know this is unexpected. I ask only that you consider it, not as an earl's proposal, but as a man's honest declaration of love and respect." Katherine withdrew her hand gently. "I need time." "Of course." He stepped back, respecting her request for space. "Take whatever time you require. My feelings will not change." After he departed, Katherine remained motionless, her mind in turmoil. She had come to Westmoreland House seeking employment, security for herself and Beatrice. Never had she imagined that she would find love, nor that it would present such an impossible choice. The following days passed in a state of suspended animation. Lord Thornfield respected Katherine's need for distance, yet his feelings remained evident in the way his gaze followed her, in the quiet attentiveness he showed to her comfort and concerns. Katherine's heart and mind waged constant battle. She loved him, that much she could no longer deny. Yet accepting his proposal would forever alter his standing in society, potentially harming the very children she had grown to cherish. A letter from her sister Beatrice arrived, describing her unhappiness in their aunt's austere household. The reminder of her responsibilities added another layer to Katherine's dilemma. On a crisp December morning, Katherine escorted the children to the British Museum, hoping the educational outing would provide distraction from her personal turmoil. As they explored the antiquities, she was surprised to encounter Lady Caroline Thornfield among the visitors. "Miss Fairchild, what a pleasant coincidence," Lady Thornfield greeted her warmly. "Children, might I borrow your governess for a moment? My companion will watch over you." When they were seated on a bench in a quiet corner, Lady Thornfield came directly to the point. "My brother-in-law has informed me of his intentions toward you." Katherine felt her cheeks burn. "My lady, I assure you." "Please, there is no need for embarrassment." Lady Thornfield's expression was kind. "James has never been one to follow convention blindly. It is one of his most admirable qualities, though it frequently vexes those who care for him." "Then you disapprove," Katherine stated flatly. "On the contrary, I have observed your influence on this family these past months. You have brought joy and stability to children who desperately needed both." She paused thoughtfully. "As for James, I have never seen him so at peace." Katherine stared at her in disbelief. "But surely you recognize the scandal such a match would create." "Scandal fades, my dear. Happiness is far rarer and more precious." Lady Thornfield took her hand. "Society will adjust, as it always does when confronted with genuine affection. Those whose opinions truly matter will recognize your worth, as we have." "I fear you are too optimistic," Katherine replied, though hope began to bloom within her. "Perhaps, but I have navigated London society for 20 years now. There will be gossip, certainly. Some doors may temporarily close. But James is respected, wealthy, and well-connected. More importantly, he is certain of his choice." She smiled encouragingly. "The question is, are you certain of yours?" The unexpected ally gave Katherine courage. "I care deeply for him, and for Emma and George. But I worry that my acceptance would damage their future prospects." "The children will face far greater injury if their uncle remains unhappy," Lady Thornfield countered gently. "Besides, they adore you already. As their governess, you have shaped their minds. As their aunt, you would shape their characters as well." The conversation left Katherine with much to contemplate. If Lady Thornfield supported the match, perhaps the obstacles were not as insurmountable as she had feared. That evening, Katherine sent a note to Lord Thornfield requesting a private conversation. They met in the library after the household had retired, the crackling fire casting warm light across the book-lined walls. "You wished to see me." His voice was carefully neutral, though hope shone in his eyes. "Yes." Katherine clasped her hands to still their trembling. "I have been considering your proposal." "And?" He remained by the door, as if afraid to approach lest he influence her decision. "I spoke with Lady Caroline today, by accident, at the museum." A smile touched his lips. "I doubt it was entirely accidental. Caroline has always been prone to interfering when she believes it necessary." "She was most kind," Katherine admitted. "More understanding than I expected." "Caroline sees beyond social conventions to what truly matters." He moved closer. "As I hope you do as well." Katherine drew a steadying breath. "I have responsibilities, my sister requires support and guidance. And there will be opposition, consequences you cannot fully anticipate." "Are these objections or conditions?" he asked perceptively. "Perhaps both," she acknowledged. "I would not come to you empty-handed, dependent solely upon your generosity. My sister's welfare must be secured, and I must retain some independence of purpose and action. I cannot simply become an ornament in your household." "I would never wish that," he responded fervently. "Your mind, your principles, these are what drew me to you. I would not change a single aspect of your character." He approached slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wished. "As for your sister, she would be welcomed as family, with all the advantages that entails." Katherine felt the last of her resistance crumbling before his sincerity. "There will be difficulties." "Undoubtedly." He stood before her now, close enough to touch. "But we shall face them together, with honesty and courage. That is the foundation I propose for our marriage, not wealth or title, but partnership in its truest sense." The simplicity of his declaration moved her deeply. This was no romantic fantasy, but a mature love, one that acknowledged challenges yet was not deterred by them. "Then yes," she said softly, "I accept your proposal, James." Joy illuminated his features as he took her hands in his. "You have made me the happiest of men." As he drew her gently into his embrace, Katherine knew there would be obstacles ahead, society's disapproval, adjustments as she transitioned from employee to countess, the integration of Beatrice into their unconventional family. Yet in his arms, surrounded by the books they both treasured, she felt a certainty that transcended such concerns. She had come to Westmoreland House seeking mere employment and had found instead her heart's true home. The wedding took place in February, a small ceremony attended only by family and trusted friends. Lady Caroline stood proudly as witness, while Emma scattered flower petals with exuberant delight and George solemnly carried the rings. As Katherine spoke her vows, she caught sight of Beatrice, radiant with happiness at her sister's side. The girl who had arrived from Bath just weeks earlier, shy and uncertain, now bloomed under the affectionate attention of her new family. "I pronounce you man and wife," the vicar declared, his smile genuine despite the unconventional nature of the match. Lord James Thornfield, Earl of Thornfield, gazed down at his bride with undisguised adoration. "My countess," he murmured, "for her ears alone." Katherine smiled, no longer Miss Fairchild the governess, but Lady Thornfield, a transformation that seemed both miraculous and entirely natural. Later, as they celebrated in the library of Westmoreland House, transformed for the occasion with winter blooms and candlelight, Lady Caroline raised her glass. "To James and Katherine, may their courage in following their hearts inspire us all." The small gathering applauded warmly. There would be raised eyebrows in certain circles, invitations that might not arrive, whispers behind fans at upcoming social events. Yet looking around at this circle of true friends and family, Katherine knew those concerns held little weight against the genuine affection surrounding them. "Are you happy?" James asked quietly, his hand finding hers amidst the celebration. Katherine gazed up at him, this man who had seen beyond social boundaries to the woman within. "Completely," she replied. And it was true, not because she had achieved an advantageous marriage or elevated social position, but because she had found a love based on mutual respect, shared values, and deep affection. As a governess, she had taught his wards about literature, history, and moral principles. As his wife, she would continue to shape their household with the same intelligence and warmth that had first captured his heart. Outside, London continued its eternal bustle, indifferent to one marriage that defied convention. Within Westmoreland House, however, a new family had formed, one bound not by mere tradition but by choice, commitment, and love that transcended the rigid dictates of society. For Katherine Thornfield, formerly Miss Fairchild, it was the beginning of her greatest adventure, one she embraced with the same courage and conviction that had brought her to this moment of perfect contentment.